Zambia's Finance and National Planning Minister Situmbeko Musokotwane announced that Zambia has experienced positive economic growth each year over the past 3 years, with a favorable outlook ahead. Dr. Musokotwane made these remarks in Lusaka during the launch of the World Bank Zambia Economic Outlook report.
This tells us that the future is good. This tells us that we must maintain the policy trajectory that has caused all this to happen. The policy trajectory of finalizing the debt arrangement, the policy trajectory of ensuring that the budget is managed in a sustainable manner without causing another debt crisis, a budget that is managed in such a way that the public funds are utilized for the most important needs of the public, such as health, such as education, such as investment.
That's how we come to the end of this Wednesday, 2nd of July's edition of the Africa Roundup. Coming up, we'll be taking a look at some headlines in the West African region of our continent, taking a look into that with a resident analyst. Stay with us.
Africa in Song with Chanduko Ligege.
This song has a line that I love so much in the isiXhosa language. It says, Andinayo nesentem daga. So I went down to the Eastern Cape. So I went to Yanga and said, Yanga, tell me here, what does Andinayo nesentem daga mean?
If I say Andinayo nesentem daga, it means that I do not have any money on me. I do not have money to give to you.
Interesting, because in Chivenda, I would just say, Tinana peni, ndo charumwe. I wonder if you have that expression in your home language when you want to say you're broke, but in a very creative way. What do you say? I'd like to hear from you.
Africa in Song with Chanduko Ligege. Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
13 minutes past 6 Central African time. Let's now take a look at some stories making headlines in West Africa. We speak to political analyst and conflict resolution expert, Dr. David Matsanga. Dr. Matsanga, how are you on this Wednesday? It's a new month. Dr. Matsanga, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. How are you on this Wednesday? We've just started a new month. How are you feeling?
I'm okay. I've been okay for a long time, and I'll continue okay. My
That's
sister.
Great. That's great. Today, for our West Africa wrap, let's start with France returning a military base to Senegal. Senegal's president, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, said last year that France would have to close its military bases in Senegal by 2025. Why are French troops withdrawing from Senegal?
First of all, I don't know whether you are hearing me properly.
I can hear you, yes.
Yes, first of all, I want to thank the president of Senegal for pushing for French's withdrawal and the removal of their base from Senegal. It is one of the reminders of colonial vestige that remains on the continent of Africa. And therefore, their withdrawal makes it freedom-free. After 67 years of independence, we want to start a new chapter. And Africa is doing the best to make sure that it shakes off all colonial ties that are not very good in line with our development currently. So the move by President of Senegal and the government of Senegal to take, and France to take away their base is welcome, and I want to encourage them to do it faster, quickly, give them time to leave immediately and go back to where they belong.
What will this move mean for those Senegalese that are working for French troops?
The Senegalese that are working for the French can get assimilated into other duties. It doesn't mean that it is only that place where employment can be got. What the Senegalese government can do is to try and get as many people or take their military back to that same place, create employment, create industries. You can build industries out of those bases where they had infrastructure, roads, schools, whatever it is. You can utilize those things and create new initiatives, an African initiative, other than having a colonial man who butchered you, slaughtered you, and having a base in your country. That is not the way things should work.
New debt fears have been raised in Senegal meanwhile. How much has the government debt risen by, and what does this mean?
Debts have risen everywhere across Africa. On the African continent, almost every country has got a problem with debt, not only in Senegal. But the Senegalese, of course, you see, for almost 400 years, France has been milking these West African states. It proves my theory, which I have been telling you, that you look at the milking. If you say the debt has risen because France is pulling out, then it means France was not doing anything to change the livelihoods of the people of Senegal or West African states where they have occupied for the 400 years that they have been on that coast. So for me, Africa should go back to renaissance, or the entire Africa, not only Senegal. If you want to get rid of this debt is where we have been captured, where we have been manipulated by the foreign countries' external forces. They say you have this debt. If you leave, we shall tell you to pay this. We shall tell you, pay us now, or we do something against you, or we send a military to overthrow you. So these are some of the things that Africa should look at, how to restructure their debts, how to tell the world that we shall pay, but give us time to this level. I am not surprised that it is coming now when they say they are pulling out their troops and they are going home, and then they raise the issue of debt.
Will the IMF or the International Monetary Fund inject more funding into the country, and what conditions could that have?
IMF always comes with hop, step, and a jump retreat policy. If you look at all countries where IMF has gone, there has been a military coup, uprisings, protests. You know very well that most of the countries in the 60s, in the 70s, 80s, they had demonstrations, strikes, army coming in because IMF has given them structural adjustments. They say you sack so many policemen, sack the army, reduce the teachers, reduce civil servants, reduce this. And the people you are throwing out of jobs go back to ferment opposition against the government, have conflict against the government. So the IMF always comes in, the World Bank comes in. And remember, these institutions are not our institutions. They are not African institutions. These institutions are Brentwood institutions in the West, manned by America, which actually has the biggest number of shares in these institutions. We don't have our own money. It is, again, a problem comes to us Africans. Why, after 67 years of independence, we don't have our own bank as Africans? Yet we have a lot of money, we have a lot of resources. We bank this money in Dubai, in Qatar, in London, in Switzerland. We don't want to bank it on the African continent. That's why African Union should be reformed to have its own bank that can assist directly countries like Senegal, countries like those Ghana that fall under pay, they fail to pay. Africa should have that sovereign bond that should be there to help African countries.
Let's move to Liberia now, Dr. Katsanga, the former president in Liberia who was killed in a coup. gets a state funeral. This after 45 years that former President William Tolbert was murdered. Why did it take this long for him to get a state funeral?
William Tolbert was assassinated by Sergeant Ndoro, one of the youngest officers, who was also equally assassinated, killed. Actually, he was more tortured than the way he killed Tolbert. I was in Liberia. I followed the story when I was still working with Sky News. And I followed the story as an African consultant. William Tolbert was murdered in cold blood, and his grave was not known where it was. People threw it. This is a man who fought for the independence of this, kept this country very peaceful, and other African countries went into turmoil. So the befitting burial is to what we call redemption strategy. When you bury, honor, restitute, reparate, that's what is lacking in Africa. Some African countries are going to chaos because they don't restitute. You don't honor, you don't account, you don't tell the truth. In South Africa, you told the truth-telling TGRC Commission. And you see how the rainbow country came out. Mandela did not come out to retribute. Retributive justice is what is killing Africa. So this honor in Liberia teaches us a lesson, my sister, that even if he's dead, he must be honored. He played a part in the stability of Liberia. I am happy with that.
What legacy does Tolbert's 9-year presidency leave behind for the people of Liberia? You speak about him having achieved stability for the country.
It was a peaceful nation. Remember, Liberia was a free state for slaves, free slaves who came back, some from Caribbean, some from America, some from all those who did not manage to cross the Atlantic Ocean. It was one of the countries on the continent of Africa where a territory which was carved, and they started agitating for their own way democracy, put up levels of democracy. He left a legacy of a democratic Liberia. He left a legacy of a stable, steady Liberia, which was disrupted after his military coup of Sergeant Ndoro. He was killed, murdered in cold blood. Things started going wrong. And you have seen in Liberia, we ended up by having Taylor, who later on took over and also captured Taylor's men and other several factions that I cannot mention for the sake of time here.
Yeah.
Other factions in Liberia came up, fought, and a civil war broke out after the death. The blood of Tolbert brought chaos, just haunted Sergeant Ndoro, haunted Liberian leader Taylor, who is serving 54 years in jail. I think he has served, we are cut to 27. He has served some of the years in jail in Belmarsh in London after the tribunal of Sierra Leone and found him guilty of offenses, which is a colonial tribunal, which I don't believe in, which is it does not heal. So his legacy was the best legacy so far in Liberian history. And you can see up to today, Liberia changes governments without bloodshed, which is very, very good for us to learn from in Africa.
Let's move to Niger now, where it's a study has found that instability in the country is threatening Chinese investments. What are the main findings of this report?
This is a correct report. Although it is mentioning Chinese investment, I think China has also come now to realize that human rights records, bad human rights can cause instability, and you cannot have any mining, any investment to carry in Nigeria. In a nutshell, Nigeria is a dead country. It's finished. It has remained a geopolitical situation with few areas, few sectors functioning properly. Security has collapsed in Nigeria. The security situation is very worse. Abduction, kidnap, terrorists in Boko Haram in northeast of the area, Maiduguri area, the Borno State, Kaduna, herdsmen, Fulani herdsmen with cows moving down to areas of productivity, Benue State, Plateau, the belt, coming down towards the Biafran issue, the form area where they are killing people, taking over their farms, their properties. So no investor would like to invest in Nigeria, given that there is such insecurity. So people are leaving. That report is 100%. It has threatened out. People are going to run out. I have taken the case to the African Court of Human Rights in Banjul, and I am placing even more emphasis to the African Court in Arusha for Nigerian government, Attorney General, to come and face me, to tell me why he has left injustices, he has left human rights abuses being conducted on the soil of Nigeria by the security agencies, by terrorists, by bandits, by kidnappers. We have lost 3/4 of girls. Our younger girls have been abducted into terrorism. And we are keeping quiet as Africans. Me, I have not kept quiet. I've taken this matter before the judges. The 11 judges in Arusha will come. Even if Nigeria does not come, at one point, they will summon them. They will be forced to come out and explain why a country and the investment is running away.
Let's go to Togo now, where at least 7 people are reported to have been killed. We saw protests there unraveling against the government and the new constitutional reforms. Can we expect this figure to rise? Reports are saying it's preliminary reports.
It is going to rise. It is sad again. Part of what is killing Africa is constitutionalism. Is constitutionalism. You make a constitution, then you shrink it. The shrinkage of constitutionalism. Togo was doing very well. The current president changed the constitution to something, to have a parliamentary system instead of the American system of presidential. The worst thing that he did is also to say, once I change this, I start being the one, because as if the other one, he was not there. That is why the rubber has made the metal. That's why the fight is on right now.
So you do believe that this new constitutional reform is an attempt?
There is quite a lot of difficulties that we see.
Yeah.
And more people are going to be killed. More people are going to die because of the protests that are taking place in that.
So, Dr. Katsanga, you do believe that Nasigbe is making an attempt with these reforms to remain in power for as long as he wants?
He's making, of course, that's why I've told you that as soon as he changed the constitution, my sister, he became the first one to use the constitution to extend himself by another 7 years. That's why the protests have triggered. That's why the opposition is saying, hello, what's going on here?
Yeah.
You changed the constitution.
We're going to have to leave it there for today, Dr. Katsanga, because we're completely out of time. But yeah, thank you so much again for joining us, and you do have a great rest of your Wednesday. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
my sister, thank you. God bless you. And I hope we meet again next Wednesday.
Yes.
When we have time and plenty of it. But that is what Africa is. And thank you very much.
Absolutely. And I hope next week we get to touch on Nigeria's billionaire businessman Aliko Dangote entering into plans to help Africa produce its own
Dangote
fertilizer.
is a great darling of mine.
Yes.
I like the way he does his things, and I let him keep going. But the problem is that he's doing it in a pariah, almost a rogue system.
Yeah, unfortunately, we couldn't touch on that well today, but
French
let's see
and
if we can
Nigeria.
next week.
Thank
Thanks, Dr. David Matsaka is a political analyst and conflict resolution expert discussing stories making headlines in West Africa. 31 minutes past 6 Central African time. Let's say good morning to Onel Nzinzi with the news headlines.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Mali armed forces are reported to have killed 80 militants in response to a series of simultaneous and coordinated attacks on military posts across the country. Mali's armed forces said the attack took place in 7 towns in the central and western regions of the West African country. The United Nations and aid groups have revealed that U.S. President Donald Trump's administration cancelled a major contract to supply emergency kits for rape survivors in Congo as violence has surged in the east this year. And U.S. President Donald Trump says Israel has agreed to the necessary conditions to finalize the terms of a 60-day ceasefire in Gaza. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Now let's find out what's happening in the world of sports. Here's Musibudi Makura with the details.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Very good morning from the sports desk. So a lot happened overnight at the FIFA Club World Cup. This as Borussia Dortmund defeated Monterrey, CF Monterrey of Mexico by 2-1 to move into the quarterfinals of the FIFA Club World Cup currently underway in the USA. So that match, by the way, was played in the early hours of this morning. It was last night that former champions Real Madrid defeated Juventus by 1-0. It was a slim score there for Real Madrid, former champions as well of the FIFA Club World Cup, beating the Italian giants 1-0 to also move into the quarterfinals of the ongoing FIFA Club World Cup. Interestingly enough, Dortmund will face off with Real Madrid for a place in the semi-final of this cup competition. Onto this now, the South African men's cricket team has now taken an expected 1-0 lead in a 2-match test series against Zimbabwe. The Proteas beat their hosts by 328 runs at the Queen's Sports Club in Bulawayo, wrapping up the match with a day and a half to spare. Now, Zimbabwe were set a target of 537 for a victory and resumed their second innings on just 32 for the loss of 1 wicket on Tuesday. Their resistance crumbled and they were bowled out for about 208 runs. Wellington Masagadza made a defiant half-century, while captain Craig Irvin contributed 49 to the losing cause. Coben Bosch, who scored a maiden test century in South Africa's first innings, was also the Proteas' top performer with the ball. In Zimbabwe's second innings, he took 5 for 43 in 12 overs. Now, the second test will start on Sunday and will be played also at the Bulawayo Sports Club, where the South African side will be looking, of course, to get a clean sweep over the neighbours of Zimbabwe. Onto this now, the South African National Olympic body, SASCOC President Barry Hendricks has confirmed that South Africa's bid to host the 2036 Olympic Games has been put on hold. The National Olympic body will instead now shift its focus to bidding for the smaller international events, including the World Volleyball Championships, before preparing a bid for the 2040 Olympic Games. South Africa was among 11 countries, including Morocco, as well as Egypt, that had expressed interest in hosting the 2036 Games, but Hendricks says they missed the deadline to submit the necessary bid documents to the IOC.
We've not been able to get through the ministry, we've not been able to get cabinet sanction, so we're going to put that on hold for now. We can look at 2040, but then also look at other events that we need to encourage international organizations to bring their events to South Africa. For example, we've spoken to, when we were in Luzon, to World Volleyball. They want to bring their professional league here, as well as their international championships, but also their General Assembly.
At the same time, Hendricks also outlined 3 key phases required for a country to host the Olympic Games, also explaining the process in detail, as he confirmed South Africa's failed to compile the necessary documents in time to take them to the IOC.
3 phases to applying for the Olympics. The very first phase is the consultative phase and to get the buy-in. Now, we've missed that, but it has given us valuable insight as to the process. So we knew in our mind it's either 2036 or 2040, and that's something we can look at. There are 11 countries vying for 2036, and most of them have already a lot of them have already put bids. So they've been working well before we even came on board, and we feel very comfortable with that.
And finally, in summer tennis news now, veteran Serbian, that's of course Novak Djokovic, is now in the second round of Wimbledon yesterday, having to overcome physical issues to beat his opponent Alexander Muller of France 6-1, 6-7, 6-2, 6-2 in a late night match on centre court. Djokovic having dominated the first set, breaking 3 times, but Muller levelled the match after taking the second set tie-break. Now the 6th seed also resumed normal service in the third set, and a couple of breaks in the 4th set sealed the deal for the former champion. Djokovic, you'd remember, lost to the final to Carlos Alcaraz last year and will be bidding to win his 25th Grand Slam title. Djokovic said he was also delighted to be back at Wimbledon. We also saw yesterday the French Open champion, that is Coco Gauff, losing in the first round of Wimbledon, a shock loss to Dana Yamskreva of the Ukraine, beating Coco Gauff 7-6 and 6-1 to move into the second round of Wimbledon. Well, that's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, simply send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Have you been struggling to find Channel Africa?
Oh yes, where can I find you guys?
Well, you are in luck.
Warning, radioactive zone detected. Please enter.
Listen to the African perspective on our brand new SABC Plus app. Download the fresh and easy to use app from sabcplus.com or the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. Or just command your phone to find SABC Plus on your phone and check out all this good stuff. And that's where you will find Channel Africa, the African perspective. Oh yes, this is fresh and easy. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's get in touch now with what's happening in the world of business. Here's Chanduko Ligege with our business update.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda, and good morning. The third technical meeting of the G20 on the empowerment of women is underway at Kruger National Park in South Africa's Mpumalanga province. It is aimed at promoting women's participation in the economy and their representation in leadership, governance, and decision-making. It also seeks to enhance women's ownership and control. Several G20 member states, along with invited countries, are participating in the 4-day engagement, which will conclude on Friday. Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities Minister Sindisiwe Chikunga says women's contribution is hardly recognized.
The care economy is that economy that happens and is mainly done by women at home, taking care of children, taking care of sick family members, washing dishes, cleaning the house, etc., etc. It contributes a lot in the normal economy. You will not be here if there's no one who ensures that there's food in the house is clean, your dresses are ironed and washed. And therefore, behind this main economy, there is the care economy that is not recognized.
After 4 months of consecutive declines, South African motorists now face sharp fuel price increases. The Department of Mineral Resources and Energy's hikes came into effect at midnight. The price of 93-octane petrol has risen by 55 cents per litre, while 95-octane went up by 52 cents per litre. The price of diesel has also gone up. The wholesale price of illuminating paraffin has climbed by 67 cents per litre. The hikes come against the rand slight strengthening against the US dollar over the past month. The department says the primary driver is a surge in global oil prices fueled by escalating tensions in the Middle East and recent attacks by the Trump administration on Iranian nuclear facilities. 2 new online platforms aimed at boosting local manufacturing and connecting buyers directly to homegrown products and producers have been launched in South Africa. The Shop Proudly SA and the Market Access Platform were unveiled by Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Pak Stau in Johannesburg. The 2 e-commerce platforms aim to promote South African-made goods under growing global protectionism characterized by increased tariffs and import restrictions. Tau believes that these platforms will help boost support for SMMEs and create much-needed jobs and grow the economy.
Beyond transactional products and platforms, we must also create tools that facilitate inclusive and transformative procurement. The launch of the Market Access Platform, or MAP, represents a breakthrough in this regard.
U.S. senators have spent more than 24 hours negotiating amendments to a mega bill on tax and spending that appears to have stalled without enough votes to pass. 4 Republicans in the Senate have said they cannot support the nearly 1,000-page legislation as it stands, but with a slim margin of control, the party needs to win over only 1 senator. Once the bill passes the Senate, it will need to return to the House of Representatives, where it faces another tough battle as Republicans control the chamber by only a few votes. While President Donald Trump previously told Congress he wanted the legislation on his desk by 4 July, on Tuesday he conceded it would be very hard to meet that deadline. And Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says that the international debt architecture needs a profound change and concrete solutions. At his keynote address at the second day of the 4th International Conference on Financing, Sanchez shared several proposals he said will ensure that the Sustainable Development Goal is reached. He emphasized that the core problems need to be addressed.
We need to address the structural problems that prevent many countries from stabilizing their debt while investing in their future. In this regard, I would like to highlight and support a proposal advocated by the Jubilee Commission, a multilateral fund that enables countries to buy back their own debt at a discount on secondary markets before it falls into the hands of vulture funds.
$1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 534 in Botswana, 13 pula 16. Kenya, the dollar is at 128 shilling 586. Zambia 23 kwacha 85. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is 5 real 44, Russia 78 rubles 36, India 85 rupee 58, China 71 15, South Africa 17 rand 62 cents. $1 is 72 pence to the British pound and 84 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is at $3,339, platinum at $1,352 per ounce, the price of Brent crude oil at $67.17 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 117144459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chandruko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
Our G20 fact for today is South Africa's G20 focus areas prioritizes inclusive economic growth, industrialization, employment, reduced inequality, and sustainable development. South Africa assumed the G20 presidency on December 1st of 2024 and will hold it until November 2025. And that's our G20 fact for the 2nd of July.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
6:46 Central African time it is. Let's get into this story now. In an era increasingly defined by misinformation, disinformation, the role of journalists and credible media outlets has never been more critical. In an interview with Channel Africa during the ongoing seminar on freedom of the press, challenges in the digital age in Germany, Professor Gernot Wolfram of Macromedia University and the Federal Agency for Civic Education in Berlin has made an urgent call to action for media professionals. Professor Wolfram also reflected on Germany's post-World War II media landscape, the erosion of public trust fueled by so-called alternative media, emphasizing that while fact-checking means or remains a cornerstone of journalism, it is no longer sufficient on its own in a digital environment saturated with emotionally charged propaganda. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe spoke with Professor Gernot Wolfram in Berlin.
I would say that in Germany we have freedom of the press and we have a lot of media outlets, newspapers, magazine, podcasts, and so it's a huge landscape and a long tradition, especially after 1945 in West Germany. I mean, that was important to find out after the Nazi regime what this new Germany could mean. But now this rich media scene is under threat because we have more and more so-called alternative media, and they repeat again and again that there would be no freedom of the press, that the mainstream media, the so-called mainstream media would lie, and they really destroy the trust of many people in the system, and this is a threat right now in Germany.
As a journalist, how important is fact-checking?
I think fact-checking is very important, so as a basis, and this is the basis of the job of every journalist. He or she should really control, where do I take my information from, is this true, can I really prove it? So that's a given thing. But it's not enough. It's not enough just to speak about fact-checking. We have also to understand, why do people appreciate lies and fakes, and why so many people consume them every day. So we have to find out the psychological factors, the sociological factors, and we have to see how modern propagandists use pop culture, for example, to emotionalize people, right? And my criticism would be that fact-checking alone is not enough to fight this new wave of propaganda, disinformation, and fake news. So we have to do more to stop this very dangerous development.
We are in the ages of misinformation and disinformation, propaganda exacerbated by the digital age. How would one be able to stay true to the cause and be able to distinguish what is false and what is true by using, evidence-based, credible reporting?
Yeah, on the one hand, you need to have access to this, right? Can I afford a serious newspaper? Do I have access to serious information? Is also a financial question, to be honest. So, but second, I would always stress it is your social environment. If you sit the whole day in front of your mobile phone and see these TikTok videos, or you will listen to disinformation, of course it is overwhelming. But therefore, especially in schools, but also in our social environments, we should bring back a culture of debates, of polite debates, where we say, is this credible or not? What is my opinion? So, and this is what we also losing right now in Germany, that we struggle and debate very aggressively with each other. Instead of giving the main democratic value, okay, you have a different opinion as I have, that's fine, but we are both citizens of this country and we want to find out and we want to exchange our arguments and opinions. So therefore, if you ask me, we need more social investment that people learn to discuss and debate their stuff with respect to each other.
According to experience as a professor in media, what tools are being used by influencers to fuel the traffic of misinformation and disinformation that journalists should look out for everywhere in the world, be it in Europe, the Americas, in Asia, China, but also for us from Africa?
Look, the problem is that most of the influencers are not, educated journalists. Yeah, they're just good in talking, in cutting and editing videos. They are great talents for dramaturgy, for telling stories. And this is a big risk for journalism, that we see many young people listen to people who don't have any journalistic education, right? So therefore, one option we have is to find new cooperations between journalism and influencers, so that both sides can learn from each other, and also that influencers should be aware what kind of power they have, and that they should not use this power for spreading misinformation, right? And so far here in Germany we have an awareness for this, but especially in younger communities, a lot of young people appreciate these lies, and this kind of exaggerations and stuff, right? So it's an open question, but we also see that more and more professional influencers come on stage presenting serious stuff and also having huge audiences.
It looks like journalists across the world, we are operating in silos or in isolation. There should be unity. Your view on how the mainstream media is reporting about the conflicts that are ravaging the globe. You made examples of how other news papers or tabloids or media houses are reporting, which is something that also you have raised concern about.
Yeah, I mean, one problem here in Germany is that many journalists are too close with the government, or they see themselves as activists, and this is something I find problematic, because as a good journalist you have to define your role first of all, and today even more, you have to say, okay, what is my role as a journalist? I report, or I give comments. I can give comments, but I should say that, right? And so we need, as you say, a more international cooperation between journalists, and perhaps also a new charter, a new agenda. What do we understand by telling the truth? So what are our standards? And also giving young journalists who are starting their career the feeling, okay, I'm not alone. And if you ask me, I think this is a job with future, especially in times of AI. We need journalists of a new generation which will do a completely different job as the other journalists in the 100 years, 200 years before, but we need this job more than ever of people who help to navigate through this ocean of information and disinformation, and to bring back trust into the society, that there are experts who can just tell you how they work and how transparent information are created. So I think I'm quite optimistic that this job will have a renaissance.
That report there coming from Germany in Berlin by Channel Africa's Michael Mbewe.
Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
In a step toward advancing innovation, research collaboration, and industrial transformation within the BRICS bloc, the Human Science Research Council, or HSRC, and the BRICS Partner, or PART-NIR, that's the Partnership on New Industrial Revolution Innovation Center, have officially joined forces. The two institutions signed a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, in Pretoria, laying the groundwork for deepened cooperation in policy coordination and technological development. Channel Africa's business reporter Innocent Samosa has more.
According to the Human Sciences Research Council, the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding marks a major milestone in its growing partnership with the BRICS PART-NIR Innovation Center. The agreement outlines collaboration across three key focus areas: policy coordination and think tank cooperation, personal training and capacity building, as well as project development and technological innovation. Dr. Krish Chetty is a senior research manager in the Equitable Education and Economies Division at the HSRC.
The policy coordination framework with the BPIC will focus on several critical areas that align with both South Africa's development priorities and our BRICS cooperation objectives. Our primary focus areas include social implications of AI and then digital transformation, where we'll be developing frameworks for AI implementation and new digital inclusion strategies. We're also prioritizing innovation measurement methodologies, building on the HSRC's long expertise in R&D surveys and other types of surveys to develop new indicators for the digital economy.
Dr. Krish says the Council's research agenda is closely aligned with broader BRICS cooperation priorities.
So the HSRC's alignment with BRICS mechanisms is really quite multifaceted and strategic. First, our CEO, Professor Sarah Moswetsa, she is the chairperson of the BRICS Academic Forum, ensuring our work entrenches the principles of BRICS cooperation in our work within the HSRC. Second, both countries are G20 members, so we have an opportunity to promote collaboration in G20 events such as Women 20, where the HSRC is playing a leading role. And so this provides a unique platform to showcase how our partnership contributes to both African development and global South cooperation. The think tank cooperation aspect of the agreement is also particularly important. The BPIC has an alliance of 27 universities and other research institutions, which offers tremendous opportunities for the HSRC to expand its international research network.
He further outlines some of the initial sectors within the digital economy and artificial intelligence that will be prioritized for joint innovation initiatives under the new partnership.
Our initial focus will be on sectors where South Africa has both significant potential and existing challenges. So we're looking at digital inclusion first, and then e-governance, building on HSRC's past research on electronic voting and municipal e-participation platforms. And this aligns perfectly with the BPIC's expertise in the digital economy, specifically looking at the Xiamen municipality that's achieved remarkable success in this space. We're also targeting AI governance frameworks, particularly around social impact assessment in areas where the HSRC's community-focused research methodology can complement the BPIC's technological innovation approach.
It appears this partnership is expected to not only strengthen ties among BRICS nations, but also help position South Africa as a key driver of innovation on the African continent. As implementation begins, all eyes will be on the practical impact of this collaboration in accelerating inclusive industrial development through research, training and technology. For Channel Africa News, I am Innocent Samosa in Johannesburg.
Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
It's 7 o'clock Central African time, and let's enter the second hour of Africa Rise and Shine. Thank you for staying with us as Channel Africa. And if you've just joined us, a very good morning to you. My name is Asanda Beda. Riding solo today. Peter will be joining us tomorrow. He's not feeling well, but you can get in touch with us on our social media platforms in the meantime, on our coverage on the different stories making headlines in and around our continent. Our handle is at Channel Africa 1 across the various social media platforms. In this hour, we take a look at Nigeria's opposition scrambling to build momentum ahead of the 2027 general elections. And there is Mental Health Week that's being marked as well as Corporate Mental Health Week this week, and organizations focusing on employee well-being. And we'll touch on some concerning trends in terms of that mental health topic. Right now, let's get in touch with what's happening in the world of news updates. Here's Onele Nsinzi. After her will be Musibudi Makura with our sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Mali armed forces are reported to have killed 80 militants in response to a series of simultaneous and coordinated attacks on military posts across the country. Mali's armed forces said the attacks took place in 7 towns in the central and western regions of the West African country. The incidents bore the hallmarks of other recent operations by the militants who have conducted similar assaults on military positions in Mali and Burkina Faso. Mali, governed by a military junta since 2020, has for more than a decade fought insurgent groups linked to Islamic State and Al-Qaeda. The former Gauteng Province Premier Mbazima Shilowa in South Africa says if the Democratic Alliance Party leaves the government of national unity, governance will not be negatively affected. His comments come amid rising tension between the two parties following the removal of DA's Andrew Whitfield from his position as Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition. In response, the DA announced that it would not support budgets led by the African National Congress Party ministers, whom they consider to be corrupt. Shilowa says other parties would be willing to work with the ANC if the DA decided to leave.
Even if the DA was to say, we are out of here, or the ANC was to say, let them go, or whatever the circumstances, there will still be a government of national unity because the rest of the parties are likely to stay, and there are a number of smaller parties that may come on board who may not necessarily be comfortable with the DA there. So I think it will survive.
12 South African National Defence Force members have applied for bail in connection with the murder of Specialist Investigating Unit, the Hawks member, Frans Matiba. Lieutenant Colonel Matiba, a specialist investigator at the Directorate for Priority Crimes Investigations, also known as the Hawks, was shot dead in 2023. The SANDF members face charges including murder, kidnapping, fraud and perjury. At the time of Matiba's death, he was investigating claims that members of the SANDF Special Task Force had abducted an Ethiopian businessman suspected to be an ISIS leader from Shopping Mall of Africa in Johannesburg in the year 2022.
The 12 entered the courtroom wearing beanies and hoodies with their faces covered in masks. The courtroom has been filled to capacity and some people had to stand. Heavily armed Hawks officials are also present in court. The matter is continuing with the media still not allowed to record the proceedings as the identification parade has not been conducted.
The United Nations and aid groups have revealed that U.S. President Donald Trump's administration cancelled a major contract to supply emergency kits for rape survivors in Congo. This as violence surged in the east this year. This has left thousands without access to life-saving medication. The emergency kits include medication to prevent HIV and other sexually transmitted infections, as well as unwanted pregnancies. Nhlanhla Mahlangu reports.
According to Reuters news agency, the decision to cancel the contracts for around 100,000 post-rape kits has not been reported previously. The U.S. Agency for International Development contract was intended to resupply Congo's war-ravaged eastern provinces for the year and left thousands of health centers without provisions when fighting was escalating. The State Department, which manages USAID, has not responded to repeated requests for comment. Reuters also says it spoke to officials at the United Nations and 4 other aid groups that treat rape survivors in eastern Congo for verification on the story. A team also visited a site in South Kivu province to talk directly to health workers and survivors. For Channel Africa News, I am Ndlandla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
Lastly, U.S. President Donald Trump says Israel has agreed to the necessary conditions to finalize the terms of the 60-day ceasefire in Gaza. Posting on social media, Trump said that they will use the time to work with all sides to end the war. He said he hoped that for the good of the Middle East, Hamas would take the deal. The BBC's Arionde Mukherjee.
Donald Trump's announcement comes before a meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu scheduled for next Monday, in which the U.S. president said he would be very firm. There has been a build-up to a possible deal after President Trump said last week that his envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, thought they were very close. Talks at the end of May were stalled when Mr. Witkoff blamed Hamas for seeking what he said were totally unacceptable amendments to a U.S. proposal for the 60-day ceasefire.
Channel Africa News, I am Onele Ntsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Coco Gauff in tears as she's ousted in the first round at Wimbledon, and Real Madrid as well as Borussia Dortmund move into the quarterfinals of the FIFA Club World Cup. Details of these and other stories coming up at 7:30.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
We are going to go to Nigeria as our first chat in this hour of Africa Rise and Shine, talking about the opposition in the country scrambling to build momentum ahead of the 2027 general elections. Cracks are reported to be showing within the newly formed All Democratic Alliance, and one wonders there, in terms of the leadership of opposition, what that will plan out to be as Nigeria is gearing up for elections in 2027. Some seeing this as not really a collaboration, as there's struggles for power within this coalition, but others seeing it maybe as a new dawn in the democracy of Nigeria. We're going to be unpacking this with a political analyst and a member of the West Africa Democracy Solidarity Network. Getting into that chat in just a bit. We also look at Mental Health Week and what corporates are doing when it comes to a focus on employee well-being, and a concerning trend that's come up under the spotlight is the rise of toxic leadership. What does that even mean? We'll be unpacking that with Professor Renata Skuman, Head of Healthcare Leadership at the Stellenbosch Business School. Of course, if you've just joined us, thank you for doing that. And we are together until 9 this morning. Let's head over to Nigeria then for that story, as Nigeria's opposition scrambles to build momentum ahead of the 2027 general elections. Cracks are already showing within the newly formed All Democratic Alliance. Peter Obi has confirmed he'll contest the presidency, but firmly ruled out running on a joint ticket with fellow coalition member Atiku Abubakar. To unpack what this means for the opposition, Nigeria's democratic future, and broader political trends across West Africa, we're joined now from Abuja by Austin Agbe, political analyst and member of the West Africa Democracy Solidarity Network. Austin, Kedu.
Good morning.
I hope you're well then, Abuja. Let's talk about your interpretation, first of all, of Peter Obi's decision to confirm his 2027 election bid, while also rejecting a joint ticket with Atiku Abubakar. What do you make of that?
Thank you, and thank you for having me, and good morning, everyone. So what is happening right now is that people will say that Peter Obi is confirming to run. Arguably, Peter Obi from 2023 elections have been building momentum ahead of the 2027 election. So a statement about confirmation that they will run, for me, is just a statement, because I knew from the time he started moving from political allies and making visitation, it was clear there was building political momentum. And what is happening with the ADA, like you mentioned, is a combination of actors who want to wrestle power from the APC, that's the All Progressive Congress, who is the ruling party at the moment. But it's important to note that there's an unwritten rule in the Nigerian ecosystem, the Nigerian political system, that involve rotational presidency between the South and the North. Mm-hmm. Former President Muhammadu Buhari is of the North, and he did his 8 years in power. So the North completed an 8-year term. So now Bola Ahmed Tinubu is of the South and is yet to complete a 4-year term. So he's hoping to do an 8-year term. So the South is supposed to do an 8-year term. So what Peter Obi has eventually agreed to do, which is new in the narrative, is that he has agreed to run for just 4-year term to complete the 8th year of the South. So this is more of a replica of what happened during President Jonathan's administration. President Jonathan came in on a ticket that was supposedly of the North, but he became president and altered the calculation. So he wanted to continue as president in 2015. That political calculation halted him and he lost the election as an incumbent. So that's exactly what. So Peter Obi's coming in is to complete the South. So there is even no way he could run with Atiku Abubakar. And Atiku Abubakar cannot be his vice president. So he can only be vice president to Atiku Abubakar because Atiku Abubakar has been vice president of Nigeria under former president Olusegun Obasanjo. So if Atiku comes in, it will be a northern agenda, which will alter the political calculation.
So who are some of the other key figures within this All Democratic Alliance or ADA coalition, and what kind of experience and expertise will they be bringing into it to ensure that it is a successful opposition coalition?
Fantastic. So right now, even though the ADA has not been fully registered, the Electoral Commission has rejected part of the registration that is incomplete. So we are hoping it does get registered before 2026 because what is happening right now in Nigeria had happened before. It happened in 2013, ahead of 2014, towards the 2015 election, when the APC, the ruling APC now, was formed. It was formed because there was a lot of fragmentation in the ruling PDP, the People's Democratic Party, at that time. So who are the figures? There are a lot of them. Everyone who is angry with the APC are members of the coalition, including former governor of Kaduna State, a Northwest state, who played a huge role in dismantling the PDP of that time, Nasiru El-Rufai, including Atiku Abubakar, who also part of dismantling the PDP at that time, including Rotimi Amechi, the then governor of Rivers State, who was part of those who formed what they call a new PDP that eventually moved out of the PDP to form part of the APC of the ruling party of today. And including all other actors, too numerous, all other actors who are literally angry with this administration. So as you may be aware, the APC is gradually heating up from within. The National Party chair Friday. He resigned for many reasons. People say it's a calculation to give way for the re-election of President Tinubu. Others say a lot, but that is usually the problem. You target the party chair, and gradually the party chair gets angry, pull out some people out, and then go to the coalition, and then they build up. The vice president today, Kashim, is no longer visible in the political system. He has been undermined. He's almost going to run on a joint ticket with Bola Ahmed Tinubu. If he gets angry, he's going to pull out to join the coalition. There's a number of them. One of the special advisors to the president has resigned, and when he resigned, he said he has resigned to fight against the president. And there are many more of those who are doing it. And because the Nigerians are looking for an alternative, so it's building up that momentum that what they need is not a PDP as an opposition. What they need is not a Labour Party as an opposition. They don't even need an NPP. Those are the three major parties who ran against the APC in 2023. As of this time, they are no longer viable because the opposition has been literally diminished. So a new party is what may likely wrestle power in 2027.
So what would happen then if the ADA is not able to present a unified presidential ticket by 2026?
So they have an alternative. The alternative is they have a ADC that they wanted to use. ADC is already a registered political party. So the alternative is that if the ADA is not registered, we will go with ADC. So ADC is already positioned as plan B for them. It used to be plan A, ADC, because at some point they all organized around ADC. Suddenly, they just come up with a registered name and they wanted to register a new political party. But I think the essence of registering a new political party will be better for them. In Nigerian ecosystem, political parties are owned. It's very funny though. Political parties are owned by certain individuals or certain cabal. They control the party. Unlike the ADA, unlike where ANC, where you have a historical structure. In the Nigerian political party system, which is very weak, they have people who register political party based on just contesting election. After the election, those parties are no longer relevant. They literally go under the carpet. So what ADC provide as a challenge is that those who own, in quotes, those who own the ADC may want to promote a narrative of ownership. And for folks who are coming in to use it as a coalition political party may not enjoy that narrative. And that would be a challenge. So registering a new political party will be an advantage, because that's exactly what happened in 2013 ahead of the 2014 ticketing and all of that, where there was a part of PDP.
And just before we run out of time, because we're completely running out of time, I want to find your thoughts around how civil society, and especially groups and networks such as yours, can help support issue-based campaigning over this North versus South type of campaigning or politics in this climate.
The civil society has done is big. Usually the focus is on engaging the Electoral Commission on dealing with hate speeches, because hate speeches is almost a domain during campaign, is to focus on issue-based. And part of what we usually do is to have debate, national debate, for focus on issues. How do you intend to deal with poverty? How do you intend to deal with the fuel subsidy? In 2023 elections, the debate around fuel subsidy, virtually all the candidates agreed on fuel subsidy removal. So when the president came in on day one and removed fuel subsidy, and the Nigeria eventually complained, his handlers agreed that he mentioned it during the campaign, that is part of the issues he wanted to address, and he addressed it. Why are people complaining?
Right.
But Peter Obi at that time had said that if he was president, he would have removed subsidy, but with a different dimension. So it's usually that's where we usually focus. Civil society forces these political actors to address some of these issues that pertain to Nigerian people.
Austin, we're going to leave it there for today. Thank you again for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Austin Aigbe is a political analyst and member of the West Africa Democracy Solidarity Network.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Over 40 undocumented foreign nationals have been arrested for occupying hijacked buildings in the city of Johannesburg in South Africa. This follows an inspection conducted by city officials led by Acting Executive Mayor Kenny Kunene. The inspection was aimed at restoring the city's dignity. This as the city has seen an alarming increase in the number of hijacked buildings that are not conducive for people to occupy. Nontsikelelo Mtabela reports.
Shacks erected inside the 4-story building, separated by cardboards, a stench welcomes you as you enter the dilapidated building filled with water puddles streaming from a leaking drain. A creche, meant to be a safe place, has compromised the safety of children with electric wires exposed, sparking as a result of illegal connections. Johannesburg Acting Executive Mayor Kenny Kunene says the city is in severe debt as a result of illegal electricity connections from hijacked buildings.
We are calling on all the other private owners of the buildings to come forward. We are declaring war on these illegal buildings. Those that have been hijacked, that have private owners, we want them to come forward. Those that do not have owners, we are going to expropriate as the city so that we can put them in the inventory of the buildings of the city, so that as we embark on this program to revitalize Johannesburg and the surrounding suburbs, then we know which buildings we must target.
Kunene has called for stringent immigration laws in order to curb the scourge of undocumented foreign nationals in the inner city.
We will come back, take out South Africans that are here to an alternative shelter and demolish this quarter camp that is in here. Hand over the building to the owner, but also see how do we then assist the owner if they want to renovate the building or if they want to sell the building, so that the syndicates don't hijack the building.
He says undocumented foreign nationals will be deported to their countries of origin, and plans have been put in place to demolish the buildings.
We've also gotten illegal immigrants. They have passports, some of them, with the same stamp. The same stamp is on a passport from Tanzania, from Zimbabwe, the same stamp. So it's clear that there's somebody who has got a fraudulent stamp that they use on the passports of these illegal immigrants.
Kunene says more raids will be conducted and syndicates will face the full bite of the law. I'm Nomtsigelelo Mtabela, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
This week marks Corporate Mental Health Week, and as organizations focus on employee well-being, a concerning trend has come under the spotlight. That's the rise of toxic leadership, with research showing that narcissistic and psychopathic traits are increasingly common among those in senior roles. To unpack the psychological and organizational impact of this phenomenon, we're joined by Professor Renata Skuman, Head of Healthcare Leadership at the Stellenbosch Business School. Professor Skuman, always great catching up with you on these very important topics when it comes to us as human beings. How are you on this Wednesday, though?
Good morning. It's nice and chilly in Cape Town.
Oh,
but
still.
the week is halfway and rain is always good.
I thought by now you'd get some sun.
Yeah, it starts again till Sunday.
Yeah, oh no, but we'll survive. Thanks so much for making time. Let's begin with the big picture, Professor. What does current research say about the rise of toxic leadership traits such as narcissism and psychopathy in the corporate world?
So we've seen that over the past couple of decades, the prevalence of these traits have been increasing, especially amongst CEOs, so the top leadership positions, where we know that the prevalence in the general population is about 1%. We see it in business leaders as 4%. Now, that's good and bad, because some of these traits, it's really advantageous in a business context if it's used to the advantage of the organization or the employees. For example, in creating a vision and leading with charisma and inspiring others. Unfortunately, there's also some dark traits often associated with it. And if that is not checked or kept in bay, that can lead to problems. For example, a lack of empathy, even cruelty and bullying behavior, manipulation of communication. And these type of traits can really erode trust, erode transparency and fairness, and decrease psychological safety in an organization, which then leads to disengagement of employees, rapid turnover of employees, and eventually even erode the bottom line.
How do we differentiate then between a tough or demanding boss and one who genuinely displays narcissistic and psychopathic traits?
I think the main thing is a difficult boss. There will be clear outcomes. They might keep you accountable for these outcomes. They might not be the easiest person to get along with. But when we really talk about narcissists and psychopaths, they have distinct clinical, the identifiable traits. And I would like to warn around throwing the labels around too loosely. We often hear, oh, he's such a narcissist or such a psychopath. And that can be seen as defamation even. When we talk about narcissism from a clinical context, there's really entitlement, constant need for admiration, a lack of empathy, arrogance, and hypersensitivity to criticism. And for example, with psychopathy, we have manipulative behavior, even aggression, lack of remorse or empathy, and impulsivity. And then there is the consequence of that behavior where, as I said, people can manipulate others, they can become very aggressive. It's only about their own agenda. And that callousness and irresponsibility often associated with it can then have a detrimental effect to the well-being of the employees.
How prevalent is this issue of toxic leadership in the South African context, and how is it affecting employee mental health and productivity?
What we've seen is that a third of employees in South Africa quit due to toxic leadership. That's not necessarily narcissism and psychopathy, but it's a big cause. And then nationwide studies reveal that work-related stress that most of the time are due to toxic leadership accounts for over 40% of workplace illnesses. And we already know that 1 in 4 South African employees have been diagnosed with depression. So it's rife.
Let's talk about the early warning signs then now, Professor, in terms of where employees or even HR should watch out for and know when it's time to reach out for help.
I think if you pick up any of the issues that I've mentioned now before, I think what we see is that the leaders can be often very inspiring at first. But then when you either see the rise of stress-related conditions or absenteeism amongst your employees, you need to see what's going on. You might also see a decline in innovation, low morale, high attrition rates, or even reputational damage to the organization. So when you suspect that a leader exhibits these traits, there's a few practical steps. I think firstly what organizations can do is even looking at the hiring protocols. So when you want to appoint someone in a senior position, make sure that you use specific psychometric screening instruments to pick up some of these traits early enough. It's also good not to concentrate power in one position, but to dilute power a little bit. And encourage feedback with anonymous tip lines and exit interviews to help uncover toxic behaviors before they escalate. It's also important that there really should be a culture of fairness, transparency, open door policies, and that there should be accountability. So if there's leaders that cross the boundaries, that are guilty of abuse or bullying behavior, hold them accountable with clear consequences for these behavior, clear protocols and HR and legal interventions. And lastly, support the employees by investing in wellness programs, flexible work, mental health care access, and also the necessary HR safeguards.
For those in leadership who might recognize some of these behaviors in themselves, is help possible, and where should they begin?
I think the first step is to have a willingness to change. Now, that is often very, very difficult because if you're a narcissist or psychopath, the problem is never with you, according to you. So it takes someone with a level of emotional maturity or a level of willingness to be able to reflect and to act. It's then encouraged to seek professional guidance. Psychological support can offer strategies for you to mitigate your harmful traits and tone down some of the behavior. Also be willing for feedback, to receive feedback, and solicit authentic feedback, maybe by a trusted colleague or a mentor. And really focus on developing empathy and humility, to commit to leadership training that really emphasize emotional intelligence and also the ethical aspects of leadership. And then, it's so important that you even create checks and balances for yourself to really mitigate risk associated with these traits and to focus on transparency and accountability for yourself and for the leaders.
Right, we've covered quite a lot, but in a nutshell then, what would you say your advice is for South African businesses as we mark Corporate Mental Health Week?
I think to remember that personality disorders in leadership aren't clinical curiosities. They have tangible and destructive impacts on organizational culture and employee well-being. And it's about recognizing, intervening, and realigning. It's not optional. It's absolutely crucial for sustainable and mentally healthy workplaces.
Thank you so much again for your time, Professor. We'll leave it there for today.
My pleasure.
Professor Renata Skuman is head of healthcare leadership at Stellenbosch Business School, shedding light on the hidden toll of toxic leadership in our workplaces. 7:30 Central African time it is. Let's get our news headlines from Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Mali armed forces are reported to have killed 80 militants in response to a series of simultaneous and coordinated attacks on military posts across the country. Mali's armed forces said the attacks took place in 7 towns in the central and western regions of the West African country. The bail application of 12 South African National Defence Force Specialist Task Force members is expected to continue today at the Randburg Magistrate Court in Johannesburg. The group faces charges related to 2023 murder of Hawks Serious Specialist Investigator Lieutenant Colonel Frans Matiba. And the British government has faced a substantial revolt by its own MPs over legislation aimed at making it harder for some people to claim health and disability-related benefits. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's find out what's happening now in the world of sports. We say good morning to Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Very good morning once again from the sports desk. Gonzalo Garcia's 54th minute header was enough to give Real Madrid a 1-0 win over Juventus at the Hard Rock Stadium on Tuesday and book a place in the quarterfinals of the ongoing tournament. It was an impressive display from Xavi Alonso's men, also adding to a positive day, Kylian Mbappe making his return from illness and coming on in the 68th minute as a substitute for his first appearance at this year's tournament. Meanwhile, Serhou Guirassy continued his superb form for Borussia Dortmund following a 2-1 win over Sergio Ramos's Monterrey and into the FIFA Club World Cup quarterfinals in a game also played on Tuesday. The striker scored twice in the first half and then Bundesliga powerhouse Dortmund held off the Mexican side. So what that means is that Real Madrid, former champions of the FIFA Club World Cup, will face off with Dortmund in the quarterfinals on Tuesday for a place, of course, in the semi-finals of this ongoing tournament. On the continent now, as the countdown to the 2024 Total Energies African Championship narrows, Guinea's locally based national team has begun laying down the groundwork for the tournament that carries more emotional weight than usual. So with the senior national team now failing to qualify for the upcoming Africa Cup of Nations tournament, all eyes have shifted on the this side to restore the national pride. The Guinean Football Federation released its 26-man provisional squad, marking the start of what they hope will be a transformative campaign. Now, rather than staying home, Guinea have chosen to prepare abroad. A training camp begins today in Senegal, a bold move aimed at giving the squad competitive exposure. So as part of their warm-up, Guinea will play back-to-back friendly matches against the reigning CHAN champion Senegal on Friday. Also on Saturday in Dakar, a challenge that should test the team's resolve ahead of Group C battles against Algeria, South Africa, Uganda, as well as Niger. Back home now, SABC News has reliably been learned that the South African Football Association, as well as SASOL, the main sponsor of the women's national football team, Banyana Banyana, have failed to come to terms on a new agreement and that the 16-year-long partnership has now come to an end. The contract between SAFA as well as the global chemicals and energy company was first established back in 2009 and was quite crucial in developing as well as promoting women's football in South Africa. It extended to both the women's national team as well as the SASO League, which is a semi-professional league in the country. Banyana Banyana are currently in Morocco preparing to defend their Women's Africa Cup of Nations title that they won first back in 2022. It's still uncertain how the latest developments will affect Banyana Banyana as well as the league. Attempts, of course, to get comments from SAFA has been unsuccessful thus far. On to some Tennis news now. Coco Gauff crashed out at Wimbledon in the first round after suffering a 7-6, 6-1 defeat against inspired Ukrainian Dana Yenskrimska. Now, the American number 2 seed, as well as the French Open champion, was stunned in the match originally scheduled for centre court, but moved to under the roof on court 1. The 25-year-old Ukrainian, the world number 42, hit a winner after a winner in a brilliant performance in a match that spanned 78 minutes. Gauff, meanwhile, was left disappointed with her performance.
I don't really like losing, and I don't know, I just feel a little bit disappointed in how I showed up today. I feel like I could have been a little bit better, and those tough tiebreaker moments, especially after Roland Garros, where I feel like I learned a lot in those tiebreakers. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to dwell on this too long because I want to do well at US Open, and maybe losing here first round, thanks, isn't the worst thing in the world because I have some time to reset. But yeah, it's definitely sucks.
And still on tennis news, Novak Djokovic overcame physical issues to join Jannik Sinner in the Wimbledon second round. Seven-time Novak Djokovic, who is a seven-time champion at Wimbledon, could possibly meet Sinner in the semi-finals. Began his latest pursuit with an outright record 25 major title. That's by overcoming Frenchman Alexander Muller 6-1, 6-7, 6-2 and 6-2 on centre court. The Serbian appeared to struggle very early in the third set, later confirming that something was off with the stomach, but rediscovered his form following a medical timeout to win 10 of the final 12 games. Contesting his first Grand Slam since losing to Carlos Alcaraz in the French Open finals just last month, the world number 1 Sinner lost just 7 games in a dominant 6-4, 6-3, 6-love win over fellow Italian Luca Nardi. Meanwhile, the third seed Alexander Zverev was stunned by Frenchman Arthur Rinderknecht. He became the fourth top 10 men's player to exit the tournament across the first 2 days of action. It's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibu D. Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge et Binalex Sport depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Channel Africa and you have got something in common. The thirst for knowledge.
Let's find out what's happening now in the world of business with Chandugo Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda, and good morning. Uganda will require fuel distributors to blend locally produced ethanol into all petrol sold in the country starting next year, a measure that could reduce the East African nation's petroleum import bill. Uganda imports about $2 billion worth of petroleum products annually. It handed over exclusive rights for the supply of all such products to a unit of global energy trader Vitol in 2023. According to Uganda's Energy Ministry, the blending program is also part of government's policy to promote clean energy, as bioethanol can help in efforts to reduce carbon emissions. In other news, a Ghanaian organization fighting against illegal mining known as Fight Against Galamsey says Chinese nationals are to blame for the rampant problem of illegal gold mining known as Galamsey. China's ambassador to Ghana, Tong Defa, has since pushed back against accusations that Chinese nationals are solely to blame for the illegal mining activity, saying Chinese nationals could not obtain local mining licenses and were often brought in by Ghanaians who facilitated the illegal mining operations. Mustafa Gbad is part of the fight against Galamsey in Ghana.
We are not just blaming the Chinese, we are holding them responsible for the destruction of our forest reserves and our water bodies through mining. And it suffices to say that in as much as we cannot hold the entire China-Ghana relationship in contempt, we believe that a lot of Chinese nationals who have come to Ghana have been part of the very devastating situation that have affected our lands and our natural resources.
Fuel prices in South Africa have increased at midnight, leaving motorists to pay more at the pumps. The price of 93-octane petrol prices increased by between 55 South African cents and 52 cents a litre depending on the grade. Diesel increased by between 84 cents and 82 cents per litre depending on the grade, while the price of paraffin S increased by 67 cents per litre. The Minerals and Petroleum Resources Department says the price of LP gas decreased by 57 cents per kilogram countrywide, except in the Western Cape Province, where it increased by R1.90 per kilogram. Robert Make of the Department of Minerals and Petroleum Resources elaborates.
The reason for this adjustment are as follows. The higher oil prices due to the conflict in the Middle East between Israel and Iran during the period under review. The rand strengthened against the dollar and cushioned the prices by over 15 and 16 cents a litre. The MRP of LP gas is decreasing by 57 cents per kilogram due to lower prices of propane and butane. The slate levy remain unchanged at 0 cents per litre on the price structures of both petrol and diesel.
The U.S. Senate has approved a tax and spending bill that's key to President Donald Trump's agenda. The chamber was evenly split between Republicans and Democrats, meaning the Vice President, J.D. Vance, cast the deciding vote. Donald Trump reacted to the news, saying it was music to his ears. The BBC's Anthony Zusha has the details.
Obviously, he's very pleased by this. It was a big hurdle for this bill to overcome, getting all the senators to agree. There were 4 no votes, it seemed, for all of today. They finally twisted some arms. Lisa Murkowski, the senator from Alaska, switched over to their side. They added provisions that gave some subsidies on health insurance to poor Alaskans, and that won her over. And so now it goes back to the House of Representatives. They had already approved it one time, but now they're going to have to deal with these changes that the Senate put in.
A leading internet infrastructure firm has introduced a system which allows millions of websites to stop artificial intelligence bots from accessing their content without permission. Cloudflare has rolled out a tool that targets what are known as crawlers, AI bots which scour the web for data and are essential for training and operating AI systems. The BBC's Chris Valance has the details.
You're a magazine publisher. You've got a website, and regularly you see programs operated by AI companies crawling over your site, finding the data there, copying data, and you believe sending it back to the AI firm to be used as the basis of training AI systems, which will then produce text and articles that may compete with your service. You're pretty unhappy about this. Certainly some of the publishers are.
$1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira, 534, Botswana 13 pula 16. Kenya, the dollar is at 128 shilling, 586, Zambia 23 kwacha 85. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 44, Russia 78 rubles 36, India 85 rupee 58, China 7 yuan 15, South Africa 17 rand 62 cents. $1 is 72 pence to the British pound and 84 to the euro. Commodities gold $3,339, platinum at $1,352 per ounce, the price of Brent crude oil at $67.17 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chandruko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
7:45 Central African Time. It is the legal team on behalf of Judges Secretary Andiswa Mengo will not have the right to cross-examine Judge President of South Africa's Eastern Cape Province, Selby Mbenenge, and any witnesses who will be called on his behalf. This comes as the Judicial Service Commission Act and the rules of the tribunal do not accommodate the request from Mengo's legal representatives, which comes as the landmark probe now turning to Mbenenge's version of events. Kenny Mapanga filed this report.
The legal representatives of Judges Secretary Andiswa Mengo's bid for the right to cross-examine Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Mbenenge and his witnesses could not be accommodated by the Judicial Conduct Tribunal, probing sexual harassment allegations against Mbenenge. Chairperson of the tribunal, retired Judge President Bernard Ngwepe, gave the ruling.
After looking at the Act and the rules, we are of the view that such a right should not be granted. And we say so for certain considerations. Indicating that we strove in the discussion of our exercise in conducting our procedure, we strove to achieve fairness as far as possible.
The tribunal noted, however, that certain considerations have been made in the name of fairness, which includes that Mengo's team will be able to consult with the evidence leader when cross-examination arises. The tribunal moved along swiftly to Mbenenge's first witness to the stand, Judge's Secretary Zinhle Nqayi. Nqayi gave evidence that runs contrary to Mengo's version of events regarding alleged incidents that took place in the Eastern Cape Division of the High Court. Advocate Griffiths Madonsela SC probed Nqayi on the allegation that Mengo saw the Judge President hugging the court manager.
Does Ms. Mengo's allegation that she came back to later stage, peeped through the JP's office and saw the JP hugging the court manager, does that allegation have any substance or truth in it, according to you?
Phezu kwale ngcaciso ke ngokugqiba kusinika yona ngokukhumbula kwakho kwenzekayo, ingaba esisityholo aye wasibeka uMiss Mengo sento yokokuba waye wayinto ekrobayo kule ofisi ka-JP wafika besangana, ingaba ingayinto eyinyani ngokukhumbula kwakho?
Ngokukhumbula kwami ingaba yinto engeyonyani.
According to my recollection, it could be something that is not true.
The tribunal continues with the witness testimony. Kenny Mapanga, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Zimbabwe's Judicial Service Commission has ordered all judges to undergo training. The lessons that will begin this week will be conducted by ZANU-PF's Herbert Chitepo School of Ideology. Critics have described this as a new low for the judiciary in the country. Letters to the judges say the training program has been organized by the president and that it was part of a performance review. To discuss this, we're joined by political analyst Rejoice Ngwenya. Rejoice, a very good morning to you. Thanks for making time. How are you?
Thank you very much. Good morning.
What do you know about this induction workshop for judges in terms of its aims and objectives?
Well, so far we have received reports, mainly from social media and the media, that a memo was sent to the judges we assume that it came through the Judicial Service Commission sent by Chief Justice Luke Malava, emphasizing the aspect of integrated results-based management performance. Look, all public servants generally go through this process. But when you then include in the program, according to the information that we received, the ZANU-PF principal of Chitepo School of Ideology, that's Ishmael Mada, it automatically creates problems for citizens, because it shows that Chief Justice Malava is now dabbling with politics.
Who will conduct this training under the School of Ideology, and for how long will it take place?
Well, the School of Ideology, as you know, is run by ZANU-PF, and Mada is the chief of staff there. Now, we are told that this training program is going to run for 2 days, which means it's a program that is already pre-planned. They are saying it's going to be run at a hotel, but as I said earlier on, once you start involving ZANU-PF operatives like the CIO General Fulton Maguire and of course Guamatanga, then the problem is that it becomes a political ideology training program, and definitely Zimbabweans are against that.
Well, how much can be achieved in 2 days as far as a training program for such an important body, the judiciary, can achieve? Is 2 days enough?
Look, I mean, I've attended tons and tons of ideology training, liberal ideology, and I've done it over a period of 10 years. So I don't understand how such an important program of results-based management, which is generally done by the Public School of Management in Darwindale or in Masasa. So there is absolutely no way you can achieve any effective results over a 2-day period for such an important aspect. And judges themselves should know, because they went to law school for almost like 5-6 years. So I believe that this is just a workshop that is there to produce a few notes and instructions on how the judiciary should respond, should sap up with the executive, and it's totally unacceptable. It's a violation of the constitution, and it's not right that our government is subjecting our independent officials to such a so-called ideology training.
So what does then the Constitution and relevant acts of Zimbabwe provide for in this matter, if it is an abomination of that?
Shockingly, we have subcontracted the independence of judiciary to the judiciary itself. In other words, the Constitution is very clear that the judiciary is an independent arm of state. In other words, when we talk about separation of powers, it is very clear that the judiciary should not be under anybody's direction or control. This is why we have a problem with the chairperson of the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, because she's a judge, but she seems to be dabbling in politics. This is why we have a problem as Zimbabweans with the politicized cases that are the judgments that have been done on political cases because of this whole thing. So it's a violation of the Constitution, and the judges are the ones that should be interpreting the law. And I'm afraid Chief Justice Malava is way out of his line here.
What loopholes could result as government's evaluation of the performance of judges, in your view?
Absolutely, I don't believe that because we have not heard of any research or any results about the quality and of the judgment of our judiciary. So we don't see why the judges are being subjected to this when we have not had a research to find out, because we know that there's been different platforms that have been created for electronic judgment and their recordings and so forth. But particularly in terms of their performance and evaluation, there is not a research that has been done. So we don't understand why the Chief Justice has succumbed to this executive order.
How do you see this impacting public trust on the judiciary? Will it, in your view, the training of judges and intelligence services in terms of how they see the judiciary?
You know what? The horse is long bolted ago, because there is evidence that most of the judgments that have been done have a political tainting. So Chief Justice Malava himself, he was reappointed by Emerson Mnangagwa well over his retirement age. So that was symbolizing the fact that our judiciary is already under the grip of the executive. So to say that it's going to have an effect on their standing, it's already too late. I think the Judicial Service Commission should reevaluate this whole program to ensure that we still maintain a semblance of confidence in our judicial system.
Should the performance of, how are the judges reacting to this directive to train? What have they said?
Look, there are so many responses that we have seen in the media where judges have responded anonymously. Of course, we know that they are not going to be able to. But I think it is now up to the Law Society of Zimbabwe to stand this ground, to say if it is true that the judges, our members are being subjected to this, they should call for an immediate, inquiry. Because the judges themselves, even if they are commenting negatively about it, I don't think that they are going to come out publicly. So the Law Society of Zimbabwe has a responsibility to ensure that the interests of their members are protected.
Would you say that wanting to remain anonymous in their responses is as a result of feeling intimidated or fearful of the government, or more on reputation upholding?
I think that the judges, unfortunately, have already been compromised. Some of them, we know that they've received loans, they've received grants, and so forth. But I feel that really by remaining anonymous, it shows some kind of weakness and fear, because if you are a man of the law and the court, you need to exert your independence by coming out clearly and say we as judges. So we assume that they are indebted, they are beholden to ZANU-PF. So the Law Society of Zimbabwe now has a responsibility to take up that voice and be able to amplify their disgust about this new development.
Would you say this move to train the judges also puts in question the institutions under which they qualified into law?
I don't think so. I think our institutions are pretty reputable. You know that there are a lot of official law officers that are working globally in international organizations. Our university, our article system, everything seems to be highly regarded. So this is just another phase where ZANU-PF is trying to desecrate that integrity, because I'm sure they're a bit nervous about what we don't know. But I don't believe that it's a reflection of the quality of the training of our public officers. It's highly regarded, it's international, and I think that it would be fair to credit the institutions. However, we know that ZANU-PF has got an objective in terms of trying to influence our judiciary, and that is what is being condemned.
So where to now? What do you think should happen to address the voices of the critics? Do you think the president needs to come out and say something just to clarify and ensure that there is still a public trust in the judiciary of Zimbabwe?
Absolutely. The chairperson, if the chairperson of the Judicial Service Commission, if the Minister of Justice and the president of the Law Society were to make, I'm sure they must make a joint statement to reassure Zimbabweans that this whole facade is just an illusion, and we hope that should be done in as early as possible, because if that is not done, then we can all believe that truly and surely our judiciary is now under the control of the executive, which is not a good thing for constitutionalism.
All right, Rejoice, we'll leave it there for today. Thank you so much for your time again.
Appreciate it.
Rejoice Ngwenya is a political analyst discussing the training of judges that has been ordered or announced by the president in Zimbabwe, and the Judicial Service Commission ordering all judges to undergo training under the ZANU-PF's Herbert Chitepo School of Ideology. It's meant to be taken under.
That unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform.
Now Central African time, or just a minute before 8 o'clock, as we enter this next and final hour of Africa Rise and Shine. We say good morning to you if you've just joined us, and thank you if you stayed with us since 6 this morning. We are Channel Africa, broadcasting live from Johannesburg. That's where our studios are in South Africa. My name is Asanda Beda. Find us on our various social media platforms. That's X, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. You can find us there at Channel Africa 1. I always have to think about all of them because we are everywhere. Don't miss out on your opportunity to ask us questions or comment on our programming. In this hour, we look at, it's Wednesday, by the way, so we have our Wednesday profile, as per usual, dedicating that section of the show to shining the spotlight on Africans doing amazing things in shaping the continent. We'll be celebrating our own South Africa's Broadcasting Corporation, Sophie Mokoena, a veteran broadcaster with the SABC, in terms of her journey as she looks into going into retirement. Also important to note, as we were talking about mental health, alopecia, hair loss, we'll be talking about that and its emotional impact that often goes unnoticed. We'll be speaking to Dr. Esop on that one, who explains why this is an issue for many people. So that's those stories and more coming up in this hour. Let's first get our news. It's now exactly 8 o'clock, 30 seconds after, with Onel Nzinzi. Then Musibudi Makura brings us headlines after for sports.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Zimbabwe's Judicial Service Commission has ordered that all judges undergo training. The lessons that will begin this week will be conducted by ZANU-PF's Herbert Chitepo School of Ideology. Critics have described this as a new low for the judiciary in the country. Letters to the judges say the training program has been organized by the president and that it was part of performance review.
So I don't understand how such an important program of results-based management, which is generally done by the Public School of Management in Darwindale or in Masasa. So there is absolutely no way you can achieve any effective results over a 2-day period for such an important aspect. And judges themselves should know because they went to law school for almost like 5-6 years. So I believe that this is just a workshop that is there to produce a few notes and instructions on how the judiciary should, sap up with the executive. And it's totally unacceptable. It's a violation of the Constitution, and it's not right that our government is subjecting our independent officials to such a so-called ideology training.
Mali armed forces are reported to have killed 80 militants in response to a series of simultaneous and coordinated attacks on military posts across the country. Mali's armed forces said the attacks took place in 7 towns in the central and western regions of the West African country. The incident bore the hallmarks of further recent operations by the militants who have conducted similar assaults on military positions in Mali and Burkina Faso. Mali, governed by military junta since 2020, has for more than a decade fought insurgent groups linked to Islamic State and Al-Qaeda. The former Gauteng Province Premier Mbazima Shilowa in South Africa says if the Democratic Alliance Party leaves the government of national unity, governance will not be negatively affected. His comments come amid rising tension between the two parties following the removal of the DA's Andrew Whitfield from his position as Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition. In response, the DA announced that it would not support budgets led by the African National Congress Party ministers, whom they consider to be corrupt. Shilowa says other parties would be willing to work with the ANC if the DA decides to leave.
Even if the DA was to say, we are out of here, or the ANC was to say, let them go, or whatever the circumstances, there will still be a government of national unity because the rest of the parties are likely to stay, and there are a number of smaller parties that may come on board who may not necessarily be comfortable with the DA there. So I think it will survive.
The bail application of 12 South African National Defence Force Special Task Force members is expected to continue today at the Randburg Magistrate Court in Johannesburg. The group faces charges related to the 2023 murder of Hawks Serious Specialist Investigator Lieutenant Colonel Franz Matiba. They also face charges for kidnapping and disappearance of an Ethiopian national, Abdullah Abijagi, in December 2022. Matiba was reportedly investigating the disappearance of Abidagi when he was gunned down in August 2023. He was shot while driving on the N1 near the Hammanskraal off-ramp. Lawyers for the 12 read the affidavits into the record during yesterday's bail application. NPA Gauteng Province spokesperson Phindi Njonondwane elaborates.
The accused before court have already used their opportunity to present their personal circumstances, including the divulging the immovable and movable properties in their possession, as well as other circumstances that they think that the court should consider in making a decision whether or not they are suitable candidates to be released on bail.
Lastly, the British government has faced a substantial revolt by its own MPs over legislation that is aimed at making it harder for some people to claim health and disability-related benefits. Despite last-minute concessions, 44 Labour Party MPs voted against the changes, but the bill still passed due to Labour's huge parliamentary majority. The BBC's Chris Mason reports.
The government might have won the vote, but Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has been deeply damaged in the process, and now his own MPs are questioning his judgment and leadership. Attempting to reduce the numbers of those claiming health-related payments was always going to be a challenge for a left-of-centre party like Labour. But Sir Keir Starmer is accused of failing to judge the mood of his party, and critics now doubt his ability to deliver other difficult changes in the rest of this parliament.
Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Guinea kickstart their 2024 CHAN preparations. And then the South African Football Association, as well as SAFA, the main sponsor of women's football in the country, have failed to come to terms on a new agreement. Details coming up at the bottom of the hour.
Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
6 minutes past 8 Central African time. It's a Wednesday, so this is the day on Rise and Shine. We celebrate and dedicate to shining a spotlight on Africans doing amazing things in shaping the continent. Our guest this morning is Sophie Mokoena, a veteran broadcaster who has dedicated at least 3 decades telling the story of Africa. She has crisscrossed the continents, collecting and documenting current affairs as a journalist for the South African Broadcasting Corporation, or the SABC. She's the SABC's international news editor, and she has recently announced that she is retiring from the newsroom. Sophie Mokoena, a teacher who was caught by the news bug and never looked back. We welcome you now, our Sophie. How are you on this Wednesday?
Thank you so much. I'm fine, and you?
I'm good. Thank you so much. I don't know if you remember that you are actually one of the people who gave me the first email address that I needed to connect to the SABC at the time that Zolisa Sikabi was a regional news editor for radio news. And that's how I actually got into the SABC. I don't know if you remember me reaching out to you.
Yes, now I remember. I remember very well.
Back in 2009. But your journey goes all the way back, to 1994 when you began your journalism career. And that was during a transition in South Africa from apartheid to democracy. If you could reflect on South Africa's post-apartheid media landscape, what would you say is worthy to note as lessons for, some of us who are younger, and how the media is shaping modern narratives? It's quite a big thing to try and put into one answer, but let's try.
Well, I think one thing that we must accept is that in South Africa, we are able to do what we are supposed to do without fear, favor, or being intimidated. Yes, there are challenges at times where you'll have a heated exchange behind the scenes with newsmakers, be it ordinary South Africans, business, or politicians, but we are really enjoying freedom of press or media. And therefore, we are able to tell a story in a proper context as we see it, without fear or favor or intimidation. And therefore, it's something that was not a case before 1994, because we know that many journalists at times or sometimes they were even being jailed. And that is why others left the country and they died in exile, because they were being harassed by the system, because they couldn't enjoy media freedom. So that's the difference. And of course, the media has evolved because of developments around the world, technological advancement, and therefore the challenges are quite different. But we are still continuing to do what we are supposed to do, and the media is adjusting under these tough conditions.
Were you intentional about building a career in journalism, or was it an unexpected alignment, particularly at the time that you were growing up in a small town in the Free State province of South Africa called Frankfurt?
My intention was to be in the legal field when I grew up. I wanted to be a lawyer, But as you pointed out, I came from a small rural town, and I grew up and I was born in the farm, and therefore life was tough. My parents wouldn't have money to take me to university. And remember, you then have to leave your hometown, go to another province. We call them province now, to get higher education institutions. And therefore, it was not going to be easy. So then I just did my matric, and I came to Joburg to do my matric, because in that small town, there was no matric. And I had to come to Joburg. And when I'm in Joburg, I'm struggling. I'm having temporal jobs, weekend, just to fund my education. And then I decided to do a diploma in education, because you would then get a bursary. And therefore, I did a teacher's diploma for secondary education with major biology and Afrikaans, and also education and communications. So yeah, then it was up to 93, 3-year diploma, senior diploma, and then after completing 94, I couldn't get a post or a job, because the negotiations, a decision was taken to freeze posts, government posts, so that you can start with the transition, start appointing after elections in 94, so that you can transform, the different areas of government, including education. So for 3 months, I didn't have a job. Then I went to the IEC to work at the ICC in Electoral Commission ahead of elections, And then after elections, then I came to the SABC Lesedi FM as an anchor of current affairs. And I never looked back. Then I moved to Cape Town to report in Parliament as a political reporter, focusing on legislation and politics. Came to Joburg, continued with politics, Then later I applied to be an international news editor, and this is what I'm doing.
Yeah. And as you said, you went from teaching and you were a student at the Sebokeng College of Education and then had to pivot because there were no posts, teacher posts. But why do you think you never returned to teaching at the time that posts did become available and you pursued journalism instead?
I think when I was doing matric, because it was in Soweto, Malapo Secondary, I got exposure to some of the teachers who were activists underground. And that issue of journalism was another option for me. But the issue was I have to go to roads. I won't have money to go to roads. It's expensive. I'm black, I'm poor. I'm educating myself by working weekend at Edgar's, in town. So that's where it started, and with underground education, political education by these teachers who were so political but doing it clandestine. So that's then when I switched to media by accident, it wasn't a problem because it was almost similar. You communicate, you argue, you talk, you educate. So I think I never looked back, no regret. And yeah, I'm fine. And I'm a hard worker by nature. So when you come from the poor background, you always work hard because nothing comes easy. So whatever I do, I just pursue for excellence. And when I found myself there, I decided just to be the best I can be, to do everything with commitment.
Right. And you mentioned your work with the IEC. You worked as an electoral monitor during South Africa's first democratic elections. What was that experience like for you? And given your activism on democracy training and non-conflict resolution from your student years, and as you also mentioned, you were influenced by some of the other women around you, did you at any point think you could pursue being a politician?
Not at all. Under apartheid, everybody was a politician or an activist. Let me say activist, because the system was brutal and all of us were bruised. And in your small way, you will fight the system. So when I was at the College of Education, I became the Secretary General of the Student Representative Council. Now there, it was 93. I had to lead the student. And when you lead the student, you are an activist during difficult times towards elections. So I was an activist, but even before at primary in Free State, because I grew up in the countryside, every morning I had to leave home at 5 to go to the township to school. Barefoot, winter time, the struggle, you lived it. So buying on the window, not inside the shop in town, blacks are not allowed. You are being sold rotten vegetables and fruits. You live it, you know it. So you are an activist every day. So it was natural for me to be an activist at heart and understand these things. And at the college, then I had to organize programs. So it was towards elections, and people were killing each other in the Val. And I used to be very worried when we discussed the student. Hey, today they came to our street, they've killed people in Qatar and the apartheid regime. Almost like your Bipato massacre. Val was bad. Then I decided to organize peace engagements, programs, inviting political parties in the Val to come to Sebokeng as student representatives to try and mediate IFP, National Party at that time, ANC, PAC, and there was an organization called VETSVAL Secretariat. It was put up by structures from the talks at World Trade Center to try and bring together different people so that you deal with issues of violence. That was very, very rife. So that's interaction. And then I would invite Madiba to Spokane College, when we were on the HIV and AIDS awareness campaign. So I was just a leader at college and trying to ensure that when we leave the institution, we are really responsible adults and in totality, including understanding the challenges facing our community. So that kind of leadership, I think it came natural from childhood and because of the struggle. So it was easy for me then towards election to start the voter education. So because I felt, let me help elderly people who will be doing this thing for the first time. All of us will be doing it for the first time, but we are more educated and enlightened. We can catch up. Then that's why transition from being a volunteer for voter education to be a monitor, election monitor, it was easy for me.
Election season is coming up for a lot of African countries. Togo, for example, Nigeria, Uganda, and so on. What are you observing in the growth of opposition voices on the continent, and particularly as it pertains to whether or not the voices of the people are adequately given importance?
I think this younger generation is quite vocal, and they have taken a decision that they are not going to be bullied, and they are going to air their views. And fortunately, with advent of technology, they are able to communicate. That is why we see suppression of these voices in countries such as Kenya, because it's a recent thing. It's the young people who are saying, we can't. Colonialism, apartheid, now we are free and now we are being oppressed by our own. We can't. We are not going to be our parents and our grandparents. So you see that shift. And it's still very difficult. But I think there's a shift. Any leader in Africa who thinks he's indispensable, you are fooling yourself. You are just fooling yourself. Young people, the youth, are restless because they are suffering. They are suffering. I mean, men, it's so painful. And these leaders, they suppress them more, unleash the security apparatus. It's so bad. This is not what our forebears fought for. So you can see that shift.
In January, you were trending in Kenya, actually, since you mentioned Kenya as an example on that topic. You were on the social media platform X there for a question that you directed at Kenya's Raila Odinga on his campaigning for the position of AU Commission Chair. Did you think that your question was going to have the impact it did on the people of Kenya?
No, I didn't anticipate that, but I grew up an activist, as I pointed out as a child. I know oppression, apartheid system. It pains me when oppression comes, as a result of other Africans, black for that matter, and people are silent. So Raila suffered so much, we know, in Kenya. Now, he can see children are being killed, are being kidnapped by the very same people who harassed him. We know Raila and William Ruto, where they come from, even up to The Hague, the ICC, William Ruto having to go and answer, but unfortunately witnesses didn't come up. Now you want to be the chair of the AU, but you can't even raise your voice in your own country to say, no, man, we can't do this because this person is supporting your candidature. So I was asking that question, that if you can't sweep in your own house, how can you go out and sweep the streets of Johannesburg? What,
Right.
you are not inspiring confidence. In other words, other countries can be as brutal as they want. You're just gonna be quiet as the commission, the AU commission, and you've done it before. Why just a statement? That was I didn't say they mustn't appoint him or not appoint him. I was just saying when you want to lead, you must demonstrate leadership at lower level and up to the highest level.
Right. Before we let you go, Sophie, let's talk about family life a bit. On that platform X, you shared some moments with your granddaughter. I've heard that grandparenting is sort of like a second chance at parenting. Is this how you have experienced it?
Yes. You know, I've got 3 children. 2 are in finances, graduates. And then last week it was the graduation of the little one, the last born, and who has done media studies. I tried to discourage him, but
Oh my
he
goodness.
insisted. So I have 2 grandchildren and girls, and we are big friends. I really enjoy them. I can't wait. Yes, I'll continue to do work as a freelance journalist or contract here and there. Because you know, when you are a journalist, you are like a writer until you die, or if your mind is still functioning. And I still have lots of energy. I'm 63, you know, normally retirement age is 65. But people can still work up to 70 if you are strong. We see people working, we see people doing volunteering and all of that, interventions, mediation, facilitation, moderation. I'll do that kind of work, but I'll then at least have time with them because it's quite fulfilling, very fulfilling.
All right. Well, we're going to leave it there, and we really appreciate your time today, as well as your contribution to the South African Broadcasting Corporation, to journalism on the African continent at large, and wishing you the best for your retirement.
Thank you so much, and thanks to the listeners of Channel Africa. I'll still be available to do analysis and unpack and all of that, but thank you so much.
Thanks so much. We appreciate it. Sophie Mukwena, a teacher who was caught by the news bug and never looked back. Also wanted to pursue a legal profession. That didn't happen. Look at alignment in terms of her being a journalist, SABC's international news editor, and the contribution that we got to enjoy as a result of that alignment.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
In an era increasingly defined by misinformation, disinformation, the role of journalists and credible media outlets has never been more critical. In an interview with Channel Africa during the ongoing seminar on freedom of the press, the challenges in the digital age in Germany, Professor Gernot Wolfram of Macromedia University and the Federal Agency for Civic Education in Berlin has made an urgent call to action for media professionals. Professor spoke to Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe, Dr. Gernot Wolfram in Berlin.
I would say that in Germany we have freedom of the press and we have a lot of media outlets, newspapers, magazine, podcasts, and so it's a huge landscape and a long tradition, especially after 1945 in West Germany. I mean, that was important to find out after the Nazi regime what this new Germany could mean. But now this rich media scene is under threat because we have more and more so-called alternative media, and they repeat again and again that there would be no freedom of the press, that the mainstream media, the so-called mainstream media would lie, and they really destroy the trust of many people in the system, and this is a threat right now in Germany.
As a journalist, how important is fact-checking?
I think fact-checking is very important, so as a basis, and this is the basis of the job of every journalist. He or she should really control, where do I take my information from, is this true, can I really prove it? So that's a given thing. But it's not enough. Yeah, it's not enough just to speak about fact-checking. We have also to understand why do people appreciate lies and fakes, and why so many people consume them every day. So we have to find out the psychological factors, the sociological factors, and we have to see how modern propagandists use pop culture, for example, to emotionalize people. Right? And my criticism would be that fact-checking alone is not enough to fight this new wave of propaganda, disinformation and fake news. So we have to do more to stop this very dangerous development.
We are in the ages of misinformation and disinformation, propaganda exacerbated by the digital age. How would one be able to stay true to the course and be able to distinguish what is false and what is true by using, evidence-based, credible reporting?
Yeah, on the one hand, you need to have access to this, right? Can I afford a serious newspaper? Do I have access to serious information? Is also a financial question, to be honest. So, but second, I would always stress it is your social environment. If you sit the whole day in front of your mobile phone and see these TikTok videos, or you will listen to disinformation, of course it is overwhelming. But therefore, especially in schools, but also in our social environments, we should bring back a culture of debates, of polite debates, where we say, is this credible or not? What is my opinion? So, and this is what we also losing right now in Germany, that we struggle and debate very aggressively with.
That's Professor Janot Wolfram in Berlin, coming from the Freedom of the Press seminar, in conversation with Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe. 8:30 Central African time it is. Let's say good morning to Onel Nzinzi with the news headlines.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Zimbabwe's Judicial Service Commission has ordered all judges to undergo training. The lesson that will be conducted by ZANU-PF's Herbert Chitepo School of Ideology is being described as a new low for the judiciary in the country. The bail application of 12 South African National Defence Force Special Task Force members is expected to continue today at the Randburg Magistrate Court in Johannesburg. The group faces charges related to a 2023 murder of Hawks Serious Specialist Investigator, Lieutenant Colonel Franz Matiba. And the White House has confirmed that some U.S. weapons deliveries to Ukraine have been halted over concern that U.S. stockpiles are too low. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Now let's check in with the world of sports. Good morning, Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning once again from the Sports Desk. So as the countdown to the 2024 Total Energies African Nations Championship narrows, Guinea's locally based national team have begun laying down the groundwork for this year's tournament that carries more emotional weight than usual. So with the senior national team failing to qualify for the upcoming Africa Cup of Nations tournament, all eyes have now shifted to the Guinean side now to restore national pride. Now, the Guinean Football Federation released a 26 provisional squad, making and also marking the start of what they believe will be a transformative campaign for the senior men's national football team. Rather than staying home, Guinea have chosen to prepare abroad. A training camp begins today in Senegal, and a bold move aimed at giving the squad competitive exposure. So as part of their warm-up, Guinea will play back-to-back friendly matches against the reigning champion Senegal. The first one on Friday. The second friendly match will be played on Saturday, both in Dakar, a challenge that should test the team's resolve ahead of the Group C battles against Algeria, South Africa, Uganda, as well as Niger. Back home now, SABC News has reliably learned that the South African Football Association, as well as SASOL, the main sponsor of women's football in the country, have failed to come to terms on a new agreement and that their 16-year-long partnership has now come to an end. The contract between SAFA as well as Global Chemicals and Energy Company was first established back in 2009 and was quite crucial in developing as well as promoting women's football in the country. It extended to both the women's national team as well as the SASOL League, which is the semi-professional league in the country. Banyana are currently in Morocco preparing to defend their Women's Africa Cup of Nations title. They won for the very first time back in 2022. It's still uncertain how the latest developments will now affect Banyana and the league. Attempts to get comments from SAFA have been unsuccessful so far. In tennis news now, Novak Djokovic overcame a physical issue to join Jannik Sinner in the Wimbledon second round. The 7-time champion Djokovic, who will meet Sinner potentially in the semi-finals, began his latest pursuit for an outright record 25th major title by overcoming Frenchman Alexander Muller 6-1, 6-7, 6-2 and 6-2 on centre court on Tuesday. The Serbian appeared to struggle very early in the third set, also confirming later that something was off with the stomach, but also rediscovered his form following a medical timeout to win 10 of the final 12 games.
To be quite frank, went from feeling my absolute best for set and a half to my absolute worst for about 45 minutes, whether it was a stomach bug or I don't know what it is, but yeah, just struggle with that. The energy kind of kicked back after some doctor's miracle pills. I managed to finish the match on a good note, let's say.
Meanwhile, Kokogov crashed out at Wimbledon in the first round after suffering a 7-6, 6-1 defeat against Ukrainian Diana Yamskremska. Now, the American number 2 seed, the French Open champion, was stunned in a match originally scheduled for centre court but had to be moved under the roof on court 1. The 25-year-old Ukrainian, the world number 42, hit winner after winner in a brilliant performance in a match that spanned 78 minutes. Goff was left disappointed with her performance.
But I don't really like losing, and I don't know, I just feel a little bit disappointed in how I showed up today. I feel like I could have been a little bit better, and those tough tiebreaker moments, especially after Roland Garros, where I feel like I learned a lot in those tiebreakers. So yeah, I mean, obviously I'm not gonna dwell on this too long because I want to do well at US Open, and maybe losing here first round thanks isn't the worst thing in the world because I have some time to reset, but yeah, it's definitely sucks.
And finally, African wheelchair tennis champion Alwandis Kosana is overjoyed after clinching his first 2025 title at the ITF Futures International Series in Johannesburg, right here in South Africa. So Kosana marched to a convincing 6-2, 6-love victory over Germany's Anthony De Mar on Monday to claim his first singles title on home soil after 6 years. Kosana says the tournament has been crucial to help accumulate ranking points ahead of major events on the tennis calendar.
Well, it feels absolutely amazing for me to win both titles, making it the first title of year 2025. And I think it was really important for me as a top-seeded player to win these titles, not for me to celebrate them, but to collect the points, which will help me improve my ranking. And I think that's my biggest priority right now.
And that's a wrap from the Sports Desk at the SAWA. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibu D. Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Stella Longwe. Pamalonje.
Palitu sokoma pano pamalonje. Kumvera nyimbo za mu Africa, kusangalala, kupeza moyo. Akuti kumva moyo kuti kuyenda bwino. Pano pamalonje. Ndiyetu apa tindikatswiri oyimba ameneyu ndikatswiri wa dziko la Malawi amene akukhala dziko la South Africa ndipo amayimba amene akuti ndi Big Nick Malawi. Yatusati kuti kodi moyo wanu woyimba ukuyenda bwanji mu Johannesburg?
Moyo woyimba ukuyenda bwinobwino kwambiri. Chiliyonse chikutheka ndithu bwinobwino.
Hayi aziboneka chiliyonse chikutheka mofa magrasi anu apa mwaka. Akuti kumenya yonse hayi ziboneka zona ayizikutheka ndithu mu Johannesburg.
Malonje panthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo. Lowiruka ndi Stella Longwe. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's check in with the world of economics. Here's Chanduko Ligege with the latest business news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Uganda will require fuel distributors to blend locally produced ethanol into all petrol sold in the country starting next year, a measure that could reduce the East African nation's petroleum import bill. Uganda imports about $2 billion worth of petroleum products annually. It handed over exclusive rights for the supply of all such products to a unit of global energy trader Vitol in 2023. According to Uganda's Energy Ministry, the blending program is part of government's policy to promote clean energy as bioethanol can help in efforts to reduce carbon emissions. A Ghanaian organization fighting against illegal mining known as Fight Against Galamsey says Chinese nationals are to blame for the rampant problem of illegal gold mining known as Galamsey. China's ambassador to Ghana, Tong Defa, has since pushed back against accusations that Chinese nationals are solely to blame for the illegal mining activity, saying Chinese nationals could not obtain local mining licenses and were often brought in by Ghanaians who facilitated the illegal mining operations. Mustafa Bad is part of the Fight Against Galamsey in Ghana.
We are not just blaming the Chinese, we are holding them responsible for the destruction of our forest reserves and our water bodies through mining. And it suffices to say that in as much as we cannot hold the entire China-Ghana relationship in contempt, we believe that a lot of Chinese nationals who have come to Ghana have been part of the very devastating situation that have affected our lands and our natural resources.
Fuel prices in South Africa have increased at midnight, leaving motorists to pay more at the pumps. The price of 93-octane petrol prices increased by between 55 South African cents and 52 cents a litre, depending on the grade. Diesel increased by between 84 cents and 82 cents per litre, depending on the grade, while the price of paraffin has increased by 67 cents per litre. The Minerals and Petroleum Resources Department says the price of LP gas increased by 57 cents per kilogram countrywide, except in the Western Cape province, where it increased by R1.90 per kilogram. Robert Mark of the Department of Minerals and Petroleum Resources elaborates.
The reason for this adjustment are as follows. The higher oil prices due to the conflict in the Middle East between Israel and Iran during the period under review. The rand strengthened against the dollar and cushioned the prices by over 15 and 16 cents a litre. The MRP of LP gas is decreasing by 57 cents per kilogram due to lower prices of propane and butane. The slate levy remain unchanged at 0 cents per litre on the price structures of both petrol and diesel.
The U.S. Senate has approved a tax and spending bill that's key to President Donald Trump's agenda. The chamber was evenly split between Republicans and Democrats, meaning that the Vice President J.D. Vance cast the deciding vote. Donald Trump reacted to the news, saying it was music to his ears. The BBC's Anthony Zusha has the details.
Obviously, he's very pleased by this. It was a big hurdle for this bill to overcome, getting all the senators to agree. There were 4 no votes, it seemed, for all of today. They finally twisted some arms. Lisa Murkowski, the senator from Alaska, switched over to their side. They added provisions that gave some subsidies on health insurance to poor Alaskans, and that won her over. And so now it goes back to the House of Representatives. They had already approved it one time, but now they're going to have to deal with these changes that the Senate put in.
A leading internet infrastructure firm has introduced a system which allows millions of websites to stop artificial intelligence bots from accessing their content without permission. Cloudflare has rolled out a tool that targets what are known as crawlers, AI bots which scour the web for data and are essential for training and operating AI systems. The BBC's Chris Valance has the details.
You're a magazine publisher. You've got a website, and regularly you see programs operated by AI companies crawling over your site, finding the data there, copying data, and you believe sending it back to the AI firm to be used as the basis of training AI systems, which will then produce text and articles that may compete with your service. You're pretty unhappy about this. Certainly some of the publishers are.
$1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 534, Botswana 13 pula 16, Kenya the dollar is at 128 shilling 586, Zambia 23 kwacha 85. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 44, Russia 78 rubles 36, India 85 rupee 58, China 7 yuan 15, South Africa 17 rand 62. $1 is at 72 pence to the British pound and 84 to the euro. Gold is at $3,343, platinum at $1,356 per ounce, the price of Brent crude oil at $67.19 a barrel. That is all. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. 9 to 12 midday Central African Time. On the Move with Balisa Tau and Benjamin Mushata.
Should influencers be expected to be impactful in society? If there is a social or societal conversation that goes up, should we be waiting eagerly to hear what the influencers have to say?
They are more than just entertainers. They are thought leaders to some certain degree. They influence culture, they influence people's thought processes, they set trends, they shape opinions of people. And the sad reality is, although a lot of them don't want to accept it, I think we're getting better with them realizing that they're embarking in that journey, and in that space comes with a certain level of responsibility.
I see it differently in that, professionals are already good at their job, but there is an optionality that they might have to use the position that they hold in society to be able to deliver a message. This year you made the example of actors and actresses, so the same could apply to a sportsman. Just because someone's good at soccer doesn't mean that they have to have an influence over society from a specific standpoint.
Keeping you on the know and on the move. Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
8:46 Central African Time. Let's talk hair loss now, which may be easy to see, but its emotional impact often goes unnoticed. That's according to Dr. Ahmed Esop, a South African dermatologist who says alopecia affects more than just appearance. It strikes at a person's sense of identity and well-being. He explains that while many assume hair thinning is a sign of aging, the reality is different. A quarter of men start balding before 21, and women commonly begin losing hair in their 30s. Dr. Esop joins us now on the line to further discuss. Doctor, thanks for making time. How are you this Wednesday?
Morning, I'm very well, thank you, and thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. So firstly, Doctor, when do we know that it is hair loss that's taking place and not just a shedding of split ends, especially for African hair, where when we plait our hair, there will be hair that you lose when you wash it. That's something I've experienced. So that we take action sooner rather than later.
So what we need to consider firstly is that hair loss has many faceted or different causes. And the question that you put in, which is a very excellent point, because African hair is unique in both its structure and its care practices. The tightly coiled or curled pattern of the hair makes it prone to breakage. which is often mainly mistaken for hair loss. But breakage is different from the type of hair loss. So when we suspect true hair loss, we will see visible thinning at the scalp, especially areas like the hairline or the crown. You notice maybe bald patches or widening of the path. And there's also a decrease in the density that doesn't improve with gentle care and protective hairstyles. And you get different types of hair loss in African hair, which is something like traction alopecia. We get centrifugal alopecia. And these are common types that need to be addressed and treated early.
What are the causes of hair loss, and is it always hereditary?
So hair loss is not always hereditary. There are many types of causes of hair loss, and the most common that we see in the practice is androgenic alopecia. So that pattern of hair loss is usually in men and women, and it usually starts with a receding hairline and thinning on the crown. In women, it presents mainly more as an overall thinning, I think I'll say especially in the crown area, without a receding hairline. Another common cause that we see in our practices is something called alopecia areata, which is an autoimmune disease, and it presents as round or annular patches of hair loss. There's also something called telogen effluvium, which can be caused by stress, illnesses, or hormone shifts, and also common after childbirth and maybe COVID. And we also have something called scarring alopecia. So there are many different types of alopecia that we have to consider.
How would you describe, Doctor, the psychological impact then of hair loss on some of the patients that you've seen, specifically the younger ones?
So that's the most important question, I think, when considering hair loss. I think we should have even started or speaking about this, because when your hair thins or disappears, people frequently report hair loss as an identity loss and a loss of control. So weighing in on the complexities of this, it's very important to remember that you have to take a closer look at the hair loss, and you need to consider everything that's emotionally affecting the person that you are looking at, the patient for me. So you know that hair loss affects your self-image, your confidentiality, your confidence, your identity. So when you start losing hair, it can trigger anxiety, low self-esteem, and even depression. So in many cases, especially like you asked, the younger individuals or even women, it's not just about appearance. It's about feeling like they're losing part of themselves. That's why we always approach hair loss with sensitivity and holistic care.
We often think of hair loss as a normal part of aging, but how common is it among younger people, especially those under the age of 30?
So hair loss is very common, mostly obviously from the age of 30, but in people under the age of 30, we do have androgenic alopecia, which we are seeing starting at younger ages. From the age of 20 also we see that, and even younger nowadays. There are also other types of hair loss, which is traction alopecia due to hairstyles, braiding too tight. We get something called alopecia areata. So we need to consider all of this when treating our patients. And these are very, very important to consider because, like I mentioned, the psychological effects on younger people, it's worse than in older individuals.
Yeah. Can menopause result in hair loss? You mentioned a change in hormones can also contribute to this issue.
Yes, menopause definitely results, can be one of the causes of hair loss. We see it very often, ladies with hormonal changes, like in pregnancy, postpartum, menopause, or with conditions such as PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. and thyroid dysfunction. So those can be definitely related to the different types of hair loss.
Why do you think that hair plays such a significant role in terms of how we see ourselves and our image? You do mention that hair is closely tied to identity and, you know, the emotional role in people's lives that this has.
So, like I mentioned, that is one of the most important aspects to address. Hair is much more than just something that grows out of our heads. It's deeply connected to how we see ourselves and how others see us. Across cultures, hair has always been a symbol of beauty, youth, strength, femininity, masculinity, or even spiritual meaning. So for many people, their hairstyle is part of their personality and identity. It reflects their style, the mood, beliefs, and even cultural heritage. So when someone starts losing hair, it's not just the medical part that has to be treated. Especially if they lose it suddenly or at a young age, you can feel like losing a part of themselves. It affects your confidence and self-esteem and how comfortable they feel in public or in relationships.
Yeah. From a medical standpoint, how do you typically treat alopecia?
So obviously we have to find the cause of the alopecia, and then we have to do the specific test, and we treat it from there, obviously. So there are different types of treatment for alopecia. We need to make a proper diagnosis, and there's different types. So we can start with the medical history, examination of a person. We do blood tests, scalp tests, and then there can be treatment, which depends on if it's genetic, if it's traction, as I meant, telogen effluvium, alopecia areata. It's very important to remember the patient needs to know when to see the dermatologist.
Mm-hmm.
If your hair loss is progressive, patchy, sudden, or due to emotionally distressing you, then it's important to see your dermatologist or healthcare provider to get help or treatment for your hair loss.
How much of a role does diet play in hair loss, and what are the type of foods that one should look into adding to their diet to prevent hair loss or to minimize its effects somehow?
So this is an excellent question because many people wonder about that. So here's a role how a diet plays in hair loss. It is much bigger than most people realize because hair is made of keratin, which is a protein, and it needs a constant supply of nutrients to grow well. So if your diet is lacking the key vitamins and minerals, your body may divert resources away from the hair since it's not essential for its survival. So key nutrients would be iron, which is very important, especially for women. So low iron can lead to hair shedding, even without anemia. Protein, so hair is a protein based, and crash diets or low protein diets often cause hair loss. Vitamin D, it regulates hair growth cycles. So we need to make sure that our vitamin D levels are optimal. Vitamin B, especially B7, which is biotin, that supports the strength and growth of your hair. Another one would be zinc, which is important for cell repair and growth, including that of the hair follicles. And then lastly, I'd say essential fatty acids from foods like nuts, seeds, oily fish, and you need to keeps your hair moisturized and strong.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Isop. We'll leave it there for today. And thanks for enlightening us. I've learned a few things myself. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Ahmed Isop, a South African dermatologist, talking to us on the line about alopecia or hair loss. Don't know if you knew that the kind of foods you need to eat, Benjamin, when it comes to preventing hair loss or minimizing its effects.
Sure.
One of the vitamins the doctor's saying zinc and iron and protein being an important source
of
proper hair growth. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm losing my hair lately, so need
really?
to Maybe I was supposed to listen to that.
Yeah, maybe you'll catch on the podcast. Anyway, that was that chat, our final one for this
I'm turning
Wednesday.
40 Asanda.
But people are losing hair from the age of 21 as well.
Oh, really?
It's no longer now about being older and 40.
Okay, you're right, because that's a stereotype as well.
Yeah, I just think it's unfair that menopause also contributes to hair loss, because we need to catch a break as women. When do we?
You guys.
When do we?
You guys have it your entire lives, right?
Hi. So On the Move is coming up next here on Channel Africa. Do stay tuned for that. That will be hosted by Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa Tao after Africa Rise and Shine. So what can we expect today?
We're going to be speaking about something. I always zoom into one thing. You always hear people that don't have this thing say they have it, OCD.
Okay.
OCD people always feel like they are OCD
when they haven't been diagnosed.
And it's people who usually think that if you like a clean environment, you are OCD. If you like clean things, you're OCD. But it's actually more serious than that, because if you get the whole description of the entire OCD, then you'll know it's actually it's a obsessive compulsive disorder. So it is a disorder, and I think in our society we easily celebrate it, and we kind of like think it's like the nicest thing to have. But for people who actually have OCD, it can be terrible, it can be nightmarish, and at times it can be dilapidating for their lives as well. So we're going to be chatting a little bit about the serious side of what OCD is all about.
Can people take medication for it? Do you know?
I'm not sure. Maybe we should ask that.
Yeah.
Or is it maybe just more therapy?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I know. I feel like, when we say the word a couple, and we mean various things, but we don't mean two.
Yes.
We just throw terms loosely now. And OCD is one of those where we just say, because you are very neat.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And like there's so many things even that are now new cool phrases of mainstream names on TikTok and social media. So everyone is using every word for everything, but that word doesn't mean that thing.
Exactly. Well, let's stay tuned for that chat. I think it's quite important for us to get the info that we need there. Well, from me, Asanda Beda, I'm out of here, and the Africa Rise and Shine team. Stay tuned for the news up next with Onele Nzinzi. We'll do this tomorrow, 6 till 9 again.
SABC News. The African perspective.
I thank you, Asanda. Looking at your top stories, Zimbabwe's judicial service